Atheists, agnostics, long-haired weirdos, short-haired weirdos, vandals, hooligans.
The government, hug the government, love the government, hug the government, love the government, hug the government, love.
Welcome to the Politics Guys. I'm political scientist Michael Baranowski, an emeritus professor at Northern Kentucky University. My guest today is Tom Carroll, co-founder and CEO of Convos, a controlled AI-powered texting platform founded with the goal of transforming one-way texting into intelligent, two-way conversations that capture real-time sentiment and drive meaningful action. And today we'll be talking about what all of that means for political campaigns. Tom Carroll, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
So I thought we would start with the basic problem you're trying to solve here. I mean, campaigns have been texting voters now for years, and most politically engaged people have probably received more campaign texts than they ever wanted. I know I have. And so what, in your view, is broken about campaign texting as it currently exists?
Absolutely. And I am no different. Those texts fly in. And I think that's what really sparked the idea for this company, is that we saw that as a way to broadcast the message and to, shout out using a megaphone rather than listening to the people. But I mean, that is what texting is. It's a conversation between people normally. So we wanted to be able to bring that to the campaigns and also bring that as a tool for the voters. So that's what we decided to do. And that's what the entire company is built around, is turning that interaction into a conversation and, a way for people to gain information.
And so it seems to me, in reviewing sort of what Convos is and what they do, the basic argument here is that campaigns, well, they're really good at sending out messages. God knows they are, right? But they're still not that great about sort of handling what happens when voters respond or when they want to respond. And so I was wondering if you could talk about why is there that disconnect, it being good on one end and bad at the other? And maybe even more importantly, why do you think that matters politically?
Well, the reason, and I wouldn't blame the campaigns. I mean, I think every campaign professional at some point has sat in on a text bank and actively texted back voters themselves, and they've seen the benefit of it. They've seen, the more you can connect with a community, the better that relationship can be. But at the same time, as we're saying, they're very good at sending messages because they do it at scale. I mean, a very light send is 300 to 600,000 messages, and then you're getting tens of thousands of replies back. I mean, it's untenable to think that you can build any type of volunteer base that large to respond to those messages in any reasonable amount of time. So it's not so much as I don't think they previously would even have loved to be able to do this. It's just the technology didn't exist that they were able to. So that's really the point that we're trying to get at.
Yeah. And it seems to me that when we talk about, when a lot of people talk about AI in campaigns, it tends to focus on things like, deep fakes, fake ads, misinformation, all that sort of stuff. But it seems to me that you're at least in part arguing that this misses something kind of important about the operational side of campaigning. And I'm wondering, when you hear the current narrative about sort of AI in campaigning, what do you think it's either getting wrong or just missing altogether?
I mean, I wouldn't even say they're getting it wrong in the sense that that type of deep fakes and misinformation is important. I mean, we need to talk about it. We need to set laws around it. And, I just think they're focusing on the abuse of the technology rather than the benefits that the technology can potentially bring. Right. So that's where we're at. And, I have friends in this industry, I have friends running other tools that are doing great work. And it's just using the AI to do things like sort through data, to more efficiently target voters, and on our end, just more efficiently communicate and also give them a way to communicate back. I think the AI is great. I think where people miss the mark is, starting with manipulation instead of letting them know and completely stating outright, this is AI, this is what we're using it for, and just being completely transparent with it.
Yeah. And can you sort of walk us through how Convos actually works in practice? For instance, let's say there's a campaign and they say, this sounds interesting. Let's sign up. I mean, what do you ask them to give you? And then what do you do with it? And then kind of, in the end, what happens when a voter gets a text and wants to reply? How can you just the whole system?
Absolutely.
Briefly, just
So-
in a couple minutes here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a few bells and whistles involved, but the most basic idea is campaign approaches us. We'll run them through the entire system. If they like it, then we'll create an account. They will load up a knowledge base, and that is just all of the text that they want to input. That's policy, that's scraped website information, that's old speeches, event flyers, anything that they want to put into our system. And then that creates the knowledge base that we call it. And that is the only thing that the AI has access to when it's performing its future outreach. So then the campaign sets up the knowledge base, the load in contacts, then they will set a motive. The motive is, what are we looking to accomplish here? Is this, encourage people to RSVP to an event? It is encourage people to ask questions about the campaign. It is to put out an issue and see how people feel about it in regards to the campaign standpoint. It's just, you put out that initial text. And that's kind of a separate topic. But another thing we're working with them is redefining what that text looks like. So we have conversations with the campaign, say, you don't need all the information in the first block. We can ask a short sentence, a question, get people engaged, and from there, they'll find what they care about. So they'll send the text, and then completely from there, our agent texts over.
And it seems like, well, in one sense, in looking at the materials on the Convo site, you talk about how this can help to give voters answers to real questions that they have. My first thought was, well, kind of, sort of, right? Because there's a difference maybe between answers and sort of the answers that campaigns want people to have. So I wonder if it's maybe would be more precise to say it gives voters the answers that campaigns want them to have to certain questions. Or can you kind of walk me through that a little bit?
Completely understandable. I mean, it's that we take a really stance that people are not numbers, that they're just intelligent human beings. And there's a double-edged sword with that. There's one that we make, focus on not spamming, treating people with respect, making sure if they decide that they want to opt out, then they are opted out in any way that they say it. But it's also the understanding that, legally, that we have disclosed that this is a campaign reaching out to you and what campaign that is. So you just have to understand that that is who you're talking to. And, if you had a politician directly in front of you, he's still only going to say the things that he believes and that he sees as true. I mean, it's just the fact that that's how this nation was built, was people sharing ideas and reacting to them. And all we're doing is letting the campaigns do that at scale, but also the people ask questions at scale. And we certainly have conversations all the time where somebody texts in a question, the agent responds, since it's not spinning it for every individual, it's only releasing what the campaign put in there. So if what they put in is not what the person likes, they are very often do say, no, take me off the list. Not me. I'm not a person for you.
Yeah.
And I think, it just works both ways, just assuming an educated population and that they know what we're doing.
It seems to me one way that we could sort of describe what you're trying to do is giving campaigns what amounts to sort of a endlessly patient, always on, perfectly on message volunteer, or really like a ton of volunteers who can talk to thousands, even millions of voters at once. Now, if I'm a campaign, I'm like, oh my God, yes, where do I sign? But can you talk a little bit about why you think this is an improvement maybe for the voters, the public in general, as opposed to just a useful tool for campaigns?
Yeah, I think that cuts down to the metric of success with texting. And previously, it's been really on the delivery receipt. It's how many numbers did we reach? And I mean, that's not the benefit here, because then you get inherently that the goal is then reach as many as you can. So that's the motivation. What we've set the motivation as is the conversation rate. And so that's the metric that we promote throughout our entire platform. That's what we show people that they should really optimize for. And so you'll turn that from, let's not reach out to every single person and send as many texts. Let's reach out to the right people, send the right message that's shorter. And when people engage, let's keep going with them. And when people don't engage, to multiple texts, maybe we pull back and don't message them again because they're clearly not somebody interested. So, I mean, on a part of it, it's encouraging a lot more scrutiny on who you're reaching out to and how often. Because, if somebody has a great conversation, or they tell you, hey, stop texting me, it sends a lot more clear signals, and we surface those signals easier. And then second of all, it is, again, being a tool of information, being able to access any question you have 24/7 from the campaign. I mean, you're out at
Right.
the bar, your buddy's talking to you, and you're like, oh, well, I like this guy. And they say, well, what do they think about healthcare? And you don't know, but you can quickly send a text saying, oh, what does the campaign think about this? And within 30 seconds, you'll have the answer.
So it sounds to me in a way, because at first when I think if people hear about, well, here's a tool to improve campaign messaging, people say, oh my God, please no, we don't want any more messaging. But really it sounds like when I think about why most of the campaign texts I get feel kind of intrusive, manipulative, kind of spammy, honestly, is because they're too long. They're talking to me in language that doesn't resonate with me, and it just feels kind of fake. But it sounds to me like at least using this as part of maybe an iterative process, it would actually make a lot of those issues that I have and that millions of Americans have with campaign messaging maybe less of issues.
Absolutely. I think that it's just that the more work, because again, if you're optimizing for engagement rather than just broadcast, there's real work that can be done essentially through a lot of even other AI tools and companies that we're looking to partner with that really enrich contacts a lot more before you even reach out. So you know who this person is, what type of messaging is, are they even interested in? What topics are they interested in? And, really cut to the edge of it and say, hi, I'm John Smith. I care about your healthcare. I know it's a topic that worries you. This is what I intend to do about it. And even if both sides doing that, I mean, you just have a lot more clear picture on who would be the right candidate for you.
Yeah. And I think you do a really good job of being transparent about, telling voters that this is an AI system and not a human being.
Absolutely.
And I think when I think about disclosure in this sense, I think, well, that's good. Generally speaking, I'm for disclosure. Most people are, I think. But I could see a really cynical person saying, yeah, but doesn't that kind of put another layer of accountability or lack of accountability in between the campaign and the person? Because you can just say, well, you know what? The AI screwed up, and that's not us. That's just weird, hallucinating AI sort of thing. I don't know. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I mean, the thing is that if we were to send a bad text, it would not be blamed by the AI. People would just blame the campaign. They don't give that type of grace to the campaign for any tool that they're using. But I think that it really is just cuts back to the fact that we don't allow, at least on our platform, the agent to go off script really at all. So although it's synthesizing it into a great text message, it really is only saying the campaign's policy points in response. And so you can't really push it off. It's that if somebody has a problem with it, is most likely they just have a problem with the policy as written by the campaign. And I mean, we're not the only place that policy is written. That's going to be on their website. That's going to be as publicly available information. So I don't think it's really going to be a scapegoat for people.
I also want to ask you about engagement because some people might think, well, no one wants to talk to an AI. But when I think about, for instance, how I use GPT or Claude for so many things, I often find that I have longer and deeper conversations with those non-human entities than I do with actual human beings. And I'm wondering, do you think that there's a carryover? Maybe I'm weird. I don't think I'm that weird in this regard. But do you think there's a carryover there that maybe voters might actually in some way, at least certain voters, be more comfortable kind of pushing back and kind of engaging with one of these systems than with a human volunteer or something like that?
I mean, you're not weird. We have a case study saying you're not weird because that's what we're finding. I mean, we're just seeing that for whatever reason. I think there's definitely a lot of times I've, tried to guess and really just try to see why it is. But regardless, we're just seeing in the data that when people understand it's an AI agent or we disclose that it's a tool, a virtual assistant, we fully disclose what's going on. They have longer conversations with more positive sentiment and usually more positive alignment with the campaign's messaging, which is it's just part of the modern day. And it's coming out in more studies more and more that maybe it's when you're texting a person, it feels like you're taking up their time or you're worried about, whatever it is. I also with the agent, it's just we're getting back text messages to whatever question you have within 30 to 40 seconds. And so there's really that stream of thought where you can kind of keep things building, which anything can happen with a volunteer messaging. They go off to message other things. They're balancing multiple conversations. I mean, there's no volunteer that is sitting there dedicated to one singular voter for 2 hours, which, we've done. We just had a messaging conversation the other night that went on for 3 hours for 75 messages. It's incredible to see. But I mean, it's just people are willing to do that when they're interacting with a tool, and just, it's almost like, surfing the web, or just like, it's like Googling it, but it's talking directly to it and getting it straight.
And on one hand, I think that's a great thing. And certainly to me, one of the great benefits of AI in a lot of realms for me personally is it allows me that engagement and that deeper understanding. But I think a lot of folks think, well, yeah, but that also allows for greater manipulation, right? Because there's this line between, campaigns want to persuade, that's their whole point. And I think a concern of some people is, well, if you get this deeper engagement, doesn't this make AI systems, messaging systems that are interactive, just a fantastic tool for manipulation? And honestly, I got to say, these days, I don't even know if maybe persuasion and manipulation aren't just sort of two words for the same thing at this point. I'm sure you guys have thought a lot about this. Kind of what's your thinking on this?
Yeah, I mean, how our sales process works is that we have to fully register somebody to be able to put out text messages under a 10 DLC number, as all text vendors do. We work directly with the campaign, so you have a registered campaign, so you don't at least have third parties infiltrating our system. You have, actual political parties. They have to disclose who they are at the beginning. And then it's just beyond that. I mean, that it is what it is. I mean, you have every single media platform. The campaign is putting out their messaging and their spin based on what they believe. And it is just up to the discerning consumer to have to be able to manage that. I think one reason that we might be helpful is that we're not leveraging the trust of a third party. If you're on another platform, you might be kind of sending the message through another vessel that might add a layer of trust, even if it's artificial. Where us is that you're getting a message directly from the campaign, from a number you most likely don't have saved in your phone, saying that this is this campaign. And so you just have to be able to say, okay, well then tell me this. And, you don't have any extra trust other than what you're gaining from the conversation.
Yeah. What about data privacy issues? Because I think personalization, being able to kind of be interactive can at least be a double-edged sword. It's great to have that, to feel like a system is actually responding to your specific needs and situation. But on the other hand, there are people who say, well, that's great, but what's it doing with all this specific personalized information that I'm giving it in interacting with it? And so how does that work, at least in combos?
Yeah, I mean, well, to speak on our system, we're incredibly locked down. We have just enterprise level encryption across the board. We have a contract with every single client that we will never, share, sell anything with anybody data. If a campaign lets us say, hey, please delete everything, within 24 hours, they get a report saying that every bit of information that's in our system related to them has been deleted. Information gained on voters, if somebody discusses that they're interested in X, that is then not shared between accounts at all. That stays within that client's account, completely locked down to them. But, beyond that, the level of data privacy in the wide world, it's just at this point, it is what it is. I mean, campaigns are utilizing the voter file. There's a lot of attributes that are attached to every single person in there. It's a publicly available resource. They are, they're just utilizing everything that is at hand, because unfortunately in the modern age, it's just information about you exists everywhere. It's out there, and the campaigns are leveraging it. And it's not something that we control in a sense of how much they have access to, but at least we're doing a good job of controlling a very transactional rather than manipulative way of utilizing that information. At least using it in some way to more, instead of really manipulate people, to more so customize their messaging just to get to the point of what they care about. I think that's what it is. It's just how you use it versus how much is out there.
Yeah. let's say a voter gets one of these messages and they ask a question that either the campaign doesn't have materials on or it just doesn't want to answer for whatever reason. I mean, it could be people ask all kinds of weird questions, right? And so, what does the system do then? Does it just like say, sorry, you can't answer that? Or how does that work?
Yeah, it's a bit of art to that, is that we oftentimes will see that it takes a good job of doing, hey, I don't have information on that, but tangential topic here, I do have information on, so maybe we can discuss that. But then also when that happens, it'll flag that as what we call a knowledge gap. And so the campaign can look at the list and say, oh, these are the topics that you don't have information on. And either, you can choose to ignore it if it's not really related to the campaign or just something random, or you can choose to add a source point and add to your knowledge base around it.
Right.
So there's different ways for the campaign to react with it. And for people, I mean, it'll just kind of divert the conversation. It'll just say, well, don't have information on that. Let's talk about this.
Kind of related issue on the Convo site. It talks about, at least to a certain extent, ban topics and guardrails that campaigns can set up for that. And I think for a campaign that really makes sense because you don't necessarily want to get into certain conversations on various topics. Who knows? But I think from a voter's perspective, they might say, well, so wait a second. So we're going into this and the campaign has pre-decided which topics it will and it won't talk about, right? Which from a voter might say, well, no, I want you to be able to talk about anything, right?
Yeah. I mean, I get it, but that's the double-edged sword. That's the whole idea of our company, is that we only will let the agent interact with the information supplied by the client. And so at least on the voter side, I mean, if it's an important topic to you and they don't have information on it, I think that should speak volumes in the sense that any random answer from a volunteer would.
Right.
It's that they have decided not to talk about that topic. And if that's an important topic to you, then maybe that's not the campaign for you to be supporting.
Yeah. I'd like to move off of the specific system to kind of get a little broader, specifically about AI regulation, which is a big topic these days and something I'm sure the folks at Convos you're very up to date on. And of course, a number of states in their regulations have focused on things like deepfakes or disclosing non-human created media, I guess the best term for it. But it seems to me that AI chatbots, AI texting interactively doesn't really fit exactly all that well into that framework. And I'm wondering what sort of regulation, really, if any, do you think would be useful or would you potentially support for AI-driven campaign conversations?
I mean, first of all, we're very supportive of all the regulations come down the pipe as far as all the manipulation, the deepfakes and everything. I think that's great. And I think legislatures need to do that quickly, just so, again, we can just cut down on the bad actors. As far as on our side, like a state like California, there's only a couple. I think one is North Dakota, the other is California. Don't quote me on North Dakota. But we automatically append, just as we do for many states paid for by X campaign.
Right.
We automatically have to append the following messages are generated by an AI. And so that's already there. It already exists. We built it into the system and we're not worried about it. We have clients out in California. Many of them are already disclosing it within the first text in the beginning. And so therefore they can take off the second half of that. Just we're automatically seeing, are they properly obeying whatever laws exist? And I think in our situation, the only laws that really would happen other than outright banning it would be disclosing that it's an AI. And so we're completely happy with that. And I don't think campaign communication having zero AI, just seeing on what we're doing, the source of information for people, we're not too worried about that.
Yeah.
So I do think that it'll come down to disclosure and we're already happy to do that and we encourage it.
What about, say, records preservation? For instance, do you think campaigns should have to preserve these transcripts, like I should call them, of kind of these interactions between AI agents for various reasons? I mean, legal challenges, whatever. And I guess if so, then you got to balance that against voter privacy as well, which is always kind of a tension.
Yeah, it is really just, making sure our systems are as encrypted as possible. It's maintaining that all of that data. It's keeping it solely for that campaign. And then I guess there's time limits that we just have to look at and that we've
Yeah.
been discussing internally is that how long does this data need to exist before there's ultimately, past the goodbye date. And so, it's an internal discussion. We're still reviewing that, figuring out what the policy is best going to be. At the end of the day, we've only been around for a year and a half at this point. So, we're still holding on to everything, ensuring our system is locked down as possible and that any information that a campaign might need is, still accessible.
When I looked on your website, I've noticed a number of clients you mentioned, at least kind of generally speaking, the Wisconsin Supreme Court race. Look, there was a number of other, it seemed to be largely more left of center progressive clients. And it made me wonder if this technology is being adopted more quickly on the left than the right, or not so much. I don't know have you noticed
Yeah.
anything about that?
So, it gets down to a bit anecdotal. At the end of the day, what our belief is that we want to be strictly nonpartisan because we want our agent to only speak for the client. Period. End of sentence. It's that even, within the Republican and Democratic Party, there's wildly different sides of each. And we just don't believe that a partisan tool that is doing direct voter outreach is beneficial to the campaign. I think they really truly want somebody that is just a technology tool to amplify their own voice. Now, as far as who has been taking it up, again, it's anecdotal evidence just from, I've done sales outreach. I've reached out to people. Certain people have been responsive, certain haven't. Built relationships from those that have responded, and that's blossomed into networks of connection.
Sure.
But we've found that the progressive side has just happened to uptake it more. Not to say that we don't have right-leaning
Sure.
campaigns using the technology, but that's just what we've seen.
Yeah.
I think a lot of right-leaning operatives have stated hesitancy using any tool that is used by anybody outside of their sphere, where on the left side, they've recognized that and, maybe grumbled about it a bit, but ultimately decided to use the
Right.
tool. So, there's some differences there, but my hope is that once we release more and more case studies like that Wisconsin case study,
Yeah.
that people will just see the benefit. We post, images of the conversations within those case studies. And so you can see exactly how it's messaging. And any campaign that uses us, you can click in and see every conversation live. So, I think more and more as we put that out and we show that we are just a tool to amplify, people will recognize us as just that.
There's another possible split here, not just between ideology, but between big, mainstream, well-funded campaigns and more kind of grassroots insurgent campaigns. And one thing I was thinking is that, well, tools like Convos could, depending on the pricing, of course, could help lower budget, lower visibility campaigns, grassroots candidates, that sort of thing, reach voters in a meaningful way without needing kind of humongous volunteer operations to talk to folks. But on the other hand, you could say, well, if everyone adopts it, just the big campaigns will just use that to widen their advantage. What do you think about, what's your prediction to the extent you can make one about, is this going to help smaller campaigns, do you think, break through, or maybe not so much?
You know what? I think where the difference could be, first of all, as far as our pricing, we're industry low rates for texts. We have no sign up cost, no registration cost, no monthly fee, nothing. It's just the message you send at the industry low rate. So we're completely accessible to everybody. So there is no barrier of entry of the smaller campaigns. I think we're being incredibly beneficial for different reasons. The smaller campaigns, they can spend their very limited hours not responding to messages, but being able to do this type of outreach because our messages are at a lower price point to more people in a given time period. But at the same time, the larger campaigns can then have that P2P grassroots feel at a scale that we're not able to do before. The only thing I'll say is that larger campaigns are just inherently more hesitant because they have more on the line to use a tool that talks for them. I'm willing to back up every message that goes out, but I understand the hesitancy.
Yeah.
where we've seen smaller campaigns, which we have many, many of, and we absolutely love working with, they're a little bit more willing to try things, get more creative. And so I think that's what might separate it, is that willingness to really, test out a new tool like ours.
On that willingness issue, I would expect some people would think, some campaigns would think, well, I've heard all this stuff about crazy AI hallucinations and so forth, and I don't want someone sending a text message about tax policy and then having it say something about, oh yes, I very much support Nazis in government, or some weird crap like that. So can you talk a little bit about how you address that issue, and if it's an issue at all, in fact?
It's just not an issue. It's just, if you think about what we set out to do from day one, that's the question. Is that, will this hallucinate? Will this say something that we're not able to say? So that's what we built, or not what we want to say. That's why we built it. That's what we built it entirely around. We have so many systems of checks and balances, combining, really cutting edge AI programming with traditional programming, and just, all of that. A lot of that is my co-founder, Andrew, and just the way that he built it, which is, incredible to see. But all I can say is that, we let people test drive it all the time. You can set up an account, load in your source points, launch conversations to your entire staff, see what it says, ask anything you want, throw anything at it. I think it just takes that. It's that, like, seeing these case studies with actual conversations, testing it out yourself. It's just, and also just recognizing the fact that we're used on these major, major campaigns. The number one worry is saying something that the campaign doesn't want to say, and clearly that's not happening because they're using us for months and months at a time.
Right. And certainly I would imagine it's much less of it would be, other things equal, much less of a worry with one system that is sort of centrally controlled, as opposed to a bunch of volunteers who knows, someone comes in hungover or whatever, and just says something, and you're like, well, crap, we didn't mean that, right? So that's, you don't have to worry about the AI system tying one on and then, having an issue the next day.
Exactly. Oh, my other favorite just with that side is that if somebody, responds back in any language, the AI then responds in their language immediately. Cool. So if you have a German supporter that comes back, responds to your English text and just says in German, it'll just jump right into their language.
Oh, very cool. So kind of to close out things a little bit, I wanted to ask you about AI in general and the future, because when you're obviously well-versed in this. And so when you look forward, not like distant future, but maybe like the next few campaign cycles, say, what do you see as your best case? Well, let's start with your worst case and your best case scenario for AI in politics. I want to start with your worst case, like what could go wrong in the worst possible way, and then maybe end on a more optimistic note with, well, if everything goes more or less right, here's what we got.
I think I'm really the eternal optimist when it comes to the technology. That is just inherently how I am with a lot of things. I just believe in the human progression and the slow beat of just things getting better and better over time. Obviously, there's many problems that happen in the world, but if you look at it just 200 years ago to where we are now, we're incredibly improved as a society in pretty much every metric. And it's just, I see that trend line will go forward. And that's what I genuinely believe. As far as, all right, we'll go to the gloom and doom approach to where AI could go. It's just, if we leave things completely unchecked, there's obviously general intelligence aspect that we could see, where you have AGI, then, what is that going to look like? Where could that break down some of the security protocol and systems that we have? You have quantum computing. How could that play a role in breaking some of the security that we have? That all definitely is a concern, but, on the positive side, I think there's just people there. There's people building it. There's people that understand what they're doing. They're talking to legislatures. They're building rules. As I already said, we already have laws on the books that make us disclose, and we don't exist yet, really, like, in the sense of, like, there's not really other competitors in this space right now. Right. Nobody else is doing this, and they already have regulation for us to follow in some states. And so I think it's going to quickly happen that you're going to have legislatures that see what's happening. You see it's at a scale, it's in their arena. And so they're going to want to make sure that, all the campaigns that they're going up against are using it correctly. So, I mean, I guess that it's just the technology of itself could spiral. We could go into the nonfiction books or the fiction books, rather. I mean,
Skynet taking over, and the next thing we know,
yeah, I mean, anything could happen, and I'm not the guy to perfect that answer, but I'm the optimist on the other side. I think we're going to figure it out.
All right. Well, it definitely is a really interesting and cool new technology. And Tom Carroll, I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me about it today.
Man, Mike, thank you so much for your time. This was a great conversation.
Thanks for listening to this Politics Guys interview. If you have a question or comment for us, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach us at mail@politicsguys.com. If you're not already a supporter of the show, we hope you'll consider becoming one. Supporters get ad-free versions of everything we release, our full-length midweek episode instead of just a preview, and access to our Politics Guys Discord group. It's a fun place with a great bunch of people. You can support us on Patreon, where you can even sign up for a free trial. And if Patreon isn't your thing, or you're a current supporter and want to give us a little extra one-shot contribution, you can support us on PayPal and Venmo too. You'll find links to all our support options at politicsguys.com/support and in the show notes. If you'd like to get our full-length midweek episodes, but you're not in a position to financially support the podcast right now, just email me. I'm at mike@politicsguys.com, and I will be happy to get that set up for you. And whether you're a supporter or not, we'd appreciate it if you could subscribe, rate, and review us on whatever podcast app you use, as well as sharing episodes on social media. And finally, a very special thanks to our wonderful executive producers. They are Wilma Moreno, Daniel Toe, Ryan Beasley, Don Oglesby, Derek Schmidt, Dakota Heath, Jason Chrysler, Dave Dean, Jeremy Larson, Brian Matza, and Jody Marie Miller.
This podcast is part of the Democracy Group,